Try that again. Good morning. I'm Nancy Corrigan, your newly elected president for this year. Excited to be here and to kick us off. Thank you all for being here as well. This is January 16th, 2020, meeting in the board offices. And I would like to start with the roll call with you, Mr. Pei, please.
Ariel Pei.
Jose Campos.
Nancy Corrigan.
Michael Savoy.
Mark Silverman.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Sochi Leon.
Okay, and with that, we have a quorum, but we need to be ever present and aware today that it is the 8 of us with another member caught in some traffic, and we hope that she does arrive. So in order to conduct our business, we must be present. We also have a time certain at 1:30 that we need to be aware of. So accountability is especially important today. It's always important, but especially so today. I'd like to open with some opening comments and remarks. And to start with, the CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. You may notice that some of our board members are referencing tablets during the meeting. The tablets will allow board members to be more easily access meeting materials and are not being used to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item within the board's jurisdiction. Members, please remember to pull your microphone close and have it on green so members of the audience and those attending by webcast can hear you. It's also important for our webcast archive. The sound quality can be really poor when we are not speaking directly into the mic, and that's true of visitors there at the table. Another item before we get started, those of you who did not have a chance to complete your executive officer evaluation forms, please do so and have them to me during the lunch hour if you can. We have a closed session later today. I need to have time to work with those, do some summary of them to make our meeting meaningful. Mr. Pei, I'm excluding you from that. That will apply to you next time around in September. Okay, thank you. So again, just being very mindful of our quorum issue. So moving on to agenda item 1. This is the report of the president, a report of the Leadership Roundtable meeting regarding California Board of Accountancy activities for 2020. Yesterday, the Leadership Roundtable met. That included myself and our new vice president, our new secretary treasurer, Mr. Savoy, Mr. Silverman. We met with Executive Officer Ms. Bowers, and also her executive team, and that would be Ms. Pierce and Mr. Franzella. And we reviewed items, planned topics for 2020. Staff provided an overview of their priority projects list for 2020, including getting candidates through the examination process, licensure process quicker, using the modernizing techniques, being able to transmit their transcripts faster and using the system, seeking authorization for candidates to take the Uniform CPA exam prior to degree conferral, which was a big item last year to discuss, and automating the process to apply for a CPA licensure. Staff will be looking into NASBA's ethics training as a possible addition to part of our disciplinary actions. We have noted that presently 9 other jurisdictions use this training as a part of their disciplinary program. So sometime later this year we will arrange for a presentation and we'll be able to work with it, test it out, and they will present it to us for our consideration for California. Staff included and the leadership group identified priorities for 2020. And one of those being to ensure that we continue with a cohesive board and that we are interactive with each other, actively attending or participating in board meetings and outreach events. that we continue discussions regarding CE reciprocity, that we maintain focus on internal staff cross-training, that we continue the great work of the enforcement program that we have enjoyed thus far, and that future meetings, they will present the CBA's Consumer Assistance Handbook for members to review. This is part of kind of a consumer educational process that we're looking further into. We want to continue with the student outreach activities that we have, that have been happening the last couple of years that have been very, very successful as far as reaching out to those future CPA candidates. That's so important. And in this educational process, to try to expand that to reach consumers, that all has to do with licensing, what kind of a license an individual has, the services that they can provide. Are there any disciplinary situations that the consumer needs to know about? So we want to make even more information available. We want to continue the CBA's due diligence in addressing unlicensed activity, a real top priority. We also want to continue to monitor our budget. Very important. We know last year we looked a lot and are continuing to look at the months in reserve, the fee audits and how to work with that and how to improve that situation. Very critical for our budget. So these are only the highlights, as you can tell by that, only being the highlights. We have our platter is full, let's put it that way. And I want to thank Mr. Savoy, Vice President Savoy, and Secretary Treasurer Silverman for their input yesterday, and also that from our Executive Officer, Ms. Bowers, and our executive team, Ms. Pierce and Mr. Franzella. And I look forward to working with you as an excellent team. Thank you. Agenda item 1B is the resolution for Senior Assistant Attorney General, Department of Justice, former liaison to the California Board of Accountancy, Carl W. Sahni. And I will make this official on the record. Whereas Carl W. Sahni is the Senior Assistant Attorney General and former Supervising Deputy Attorney General with the Department of Justice, Office of the Attorney General, and whereas he was assigned by the Department of Justice, Office of the Attorney General, to serve as the legal counsel liaison to the California Board of Accountancy, which he faithfully did from February 15th, 2011 through July 30th, 2019. Whereas Carl W. Sahni, on behalf of the California Board of Accountancy, represented the people of California in civil and criminal matters before all courts in the state and federal judicial system, and whereas he represented the California Board of Accountancy in both administrative and trial court proceedings to deny, revoke, or suspend licenses in cases brought against applicants, certified public accountants, accountancy partnerships, accountancy corporations, and out-of-state registered firms. And whereas he attended all California Board of Accountancy meetings and served as a valued resource during specified disciplinary matters, and whereas he gave fully of himself and his ideas and acted forthrightly and conscientiously, always with the public interest and welfare in mind, and whereas his colleagues wish to express to him their high esteem and regard, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the California Board of Accountancy express heartfelt appreciation for Carl W. Sahni for the outstanding contribution he made during his term of service as liaison to the California Board of Accountancy and to the consumers of California. Members, may I have a motion to approve the resolution? And may I have a second?
Second.
Good. Is there any further discussion from the members? Seeing none, is there any discussion from the public? Seeing none, Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote, please?
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Errol Pay,
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
And Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Thank you. And so the motion carried. Very good. Okay. So we're going to skip Agenda Item 1C and move down to Agenda Item 1D. This is announcement of California Board of Accountancy Leadership Award of Excellence. Ms. Pierce, please.
So as part of the 2010-2012 strategic plan, the board developed an employee recognition program as a way to acknowledge CBA staff for their dedication and efforts in assisting the CBA meet its mission of consumer protection. As a result, the CBA Award of Excellence was launched. This will be the 9th year the award is being presented. Management evaluates all staff and the CBA and nominates those who best meet the criteria, some of which includes providing consistently superior service through interactions with CBA staff, clients, or other stakeholders, creating or implementing innovative practices, techniques, or systems resulting in significant improvements in service, and always exhibiting a positive attitude regarding work and coworkers. This year, instead of selecting 2 staff members to receive the award as we have historically, the CBA selected an entire unit who both individually and as a group have been critical in assisting us meet our consumer protection mandate. The Information Technology Unit staff members have been selected to receive the CBA Leadership Award of Excellence. Those staff members include Amir Larion, Manny Estacio, Alan Taylor, Rich Andres, and David Hansen. So I want to take a moment to share a little information about each of the staff members. And if you could just briefly stand when I mention your name so that the board can see who you are. Amir is our newest member of our IT unit. Amir started in August of 2019, and he focuses on the CBA's website development. Among many of his talents, he's extremely knowledgeable in the area of accessibility and has been critical in ensuring all information maintained on the board website, including the large volume of meeting materials that you have before you, meets ADA accessibility standards. Amir also assisted in the development of the user interface for the soon-to-be-released online email collection system. Thank you. The next is Manny Estacio, who is not able to be here today, but he's been with the board since April of 2012. He is our one-person help desk. He provides support to all staff and CBA members and me and Patty a lot with any IT issues that arise, which for Patty and I seems to be a lot. He was also a key contributor in transitioning to our paperless CBA meetings and works on setting up the tablets that many of us are using today. Manny handles our IT purchases and has been an important contributor in many successful projects, including our relocation and our recent security audit. Alan Taylor has been with the board since 1998. Alan is here today, but he's actually down in his cubicle monitoring the website to make sure that everything is operating smoothly. He's kind of our behind-the-scenes guy. But he started with the board in 98 and moved to the IT unit in August of 2000. Alan is extremely knowledgeable with database development and management and worked in creating many or most of the databases that staff use to process applications, issue license numbers, cashier monies received, and produce reports. Alan also played a key role in the development of the online email collection system that you'll hear more about today. And on the creative side, he has established the unique names of our databases. So he is the person behind our databases that are called Ed, Adele, Bob, Bob Jr., Fred, Moby, and many others. So, Rich Andres, who is doing our webcast in back, another valued member of our IT team. Rich started with the CBA in March 1998. And most of you recognize him as our website specialist, which he has worked extremely hard to produce very professional webcasts for all viewers. And while he's stationed in the back of the room, he has a lot of different tasks. He's monitoring and adjusting the volume of our microphones, as you just noticed, watching the webcast, he's adjusting cameras, and he's working with the closed captioner to ensure viewers can read the transcript along with the webcast. Rich's ideas and contributions enabled us to create this state-of-the-art meeting room that we have here today. And when he isn't working on a webcast, he's overseeing our telecommunications infrastructure. He's managing large-scale IT orders, serving as an IT project manager on both small and big IT projects at the board. So thank you. And last but certainly not least is David Hansen. He's our CBA's Senior IT Specialist and Systems Administrator. And he probably doesn't want me to say this, but he started his career with the board in July of 1993. And his accomplishments during this time are many. Dave serves as our lead over the IT unit, providing direction and feedback, and is generally our go-to person for just about anything IT related, specifically Patty and I, with whatever problem we're having. You may recall seeing Dave at the November CBA meeting providing an update on the recent security audit conducted by the California Military Department. The CBA's success during that audit is a direct result of Dave's ideas, focus, experience, knowledge, and commitment to the board. He works tirelessly to ensure the CBA's IT assets are secure and functioning properly. And I do mean tirelessly, as a significant portion of his work hours are at night and early morning. And that's so that he can do work while staff is offline and not interrupt any processes. So it's not unusual to get an email from Dave at midnight or 2 in the morning responding to our questions. Dave always has an idea on the bigger picture and future IT opportunities. When he works, he provides solutions now and sets the foundation for future enhancements. So this is only a summary and just kind of touches the surface of the work that our IT staff do. David, Rich, Alan, Manny, and Amir, each of you are an asset to the board. And on behalf of the board, I want to thank each of you for your hard work and contributions in assisting the board achieve its mission of consumer protection. We have a certificate that will be signed by CBA leadership, and it reads, "This award is being presented in recognition of demonstrated competence, dedication, and outstanding service in supporting the endeavors of the California Board of Accountancy in achieving its mission to protect consumers." So, congratulations. And if you could just hang around until we take a break, we're going to do a little photo with our board leadership. Thank you.
Right. That is a wonderful example of fine service and longevity for so many of you, and also a good place to be working, I would think. So, yeah, congratulations again. Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Moving on to agenda item 1E, that is discussion and possible adoption of the proposed 2021 California Board of Accountancy meeting dates and locations. Ms. Reed?
Good morning. Agenda item 1E provides members with a list of the proposed 2021 meeting dates and locations. CBA staff have selected the meeting dates to avoid major and religious holidays. For your reference, attached is the 2021 calendar, which reflects the proposed dates. The CBA may choose to make a motion to adopt or modify the proposed meeting dates and locations. And at this time, I would like to turn it back over to President Corrigan and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And so do I have a motion in connection with the schedule of dates and locations?
Move to adopt.
Do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion or any discussion from members? Seeing none, any discussion from the public? Seeing none, Ms. Reed, please call for the vote.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
And Jose Campos?
Yes.
Thank you. So the motion carries. Now, agenda item 1F is the announcement of the new committee and liaison assignments. That is a written report only. I'm just assuming if there were questions, we would have heard previously on those. So I'm going to move forward. And I am now at agenda item 1G. We have Ms. Kimberly Kirschmeyer, Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Report on Departmental Activities. And you can read her bio in your folders. She has extensive experience and will add a lot to, in this new role, this new position, to our board as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Thank you for inviting me here. And just really good morning, President Corrigan, members, and Executive Officer Bowers. And just first of all, congratulations to the IT staff. I know that that is a huge role. And as a prior executive director, I know what it's like to call you at 11 o'clock at night. So I'm sure that you're always available, like ours are. So it's really my pleasure to be with you today. I am really actually honored to be appointed by Governor Newsom to serve as the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. For those of you that have read my bio, you know that the department has been my home and my entire career, and I really look forward to working with Agency Secretary Podesta and all of the boards and bureaus to improve consumer protection in California. So just a little bit going over my background, you know, I actually did start as a student assistant with, at the time it was just the Board of Cosmetology before it joined with barbering. And it was upon my graduation that I then became full-time with the department. And then I went to the medical board. When I was over there, I actually had the opportunity to leave and go back to DCA. And when I was at DCA, I was the Board and Bureau Relations. So it was during that time that I really went out and met with all of the boards and bureaus, and it really just became a desire to stay at the department and just to continue my career here. I went back to the medical board, and then I was appointed as the executive director, and I've served in that role for the past 6 years. So I have a lot of experience with the department, and I know a lot of the pains that sometimes you go through. I've lived through them as well. So I'm hopeful that my focus areas are those pain points. I will have to tell you, coming from an executive director and where I really want to make those areas the main focus of both myself and the team that we will hopefully bring in soon. So the first thing, and I just want to let you know, I sent out an email to the department employees kind of going over these main focus areas, and I just want to reiterate them to the board members so you get an idea of where I'm coming from. So the first thing is really client services and satisfaction, and I believe that every position within the department actually has a critical role in providing efficient and quality services to the boards and bureaus, so they in turn can provide services to their clients, including the both licensees and to the public that we all serve. And so that's one of my main areas that I want to focus on. I also believe it's important that we work smarter together. I've been doing some meet and greets with the legislature, and I've been telling them, you know, it's really always been kind of an us and them. You know, it's always the boards and DCA. I really want to build that collaboration between DCA and the boards and bureaus so we can go in a team effort, because I believe that we can do business better if we're working and sharing best practices amongst each other. And then the third one is really data transparency and action, and I believe that we need to use data and technology to drive the decisions that we're making, and that's something that's really near and dear to my heart. As an executive director, I would have managers come to me and say, well, we need more staff, and I would say, like, do you have the data to show me that? Because last time I checked, it was this many complaints you received over this many months and this by person, and I just don't know how you can't meet the current workload. So I believe that data is really important to drive those decisions. And from a board and bureau perspective, we've really been looking at licensing and enforcement statistics for the boards and bureaus, but I want to drive that inside to the department. I want to know how many regulatory packages that we have actually received and how long it's taking to do those. I want to know how many HR packages we've received and how long it's taking to do that, et cetera, throughout all of the central services of the department, so we can get an idea of how long it's taking us and where we may need to streamline our processes. So that's something that's really I will be working on. So taking those three elements, where I really want to drive, the first areas specifically that I want to focus on is the length of time that it takes to process regulations. I know that this has been an issue for a lot of the boards and bureaus, and especially when we have to go back to the legislature sometimes and extend deadlines for implementing bills that have been passed. So that's one of the main areas that I want to look at, and we've already begun to look at that process. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The other thing is really obtaining fiscal reports. Obviously, I'm probably speaking to the choir on this one since I'm speaking to the Board of Accountancy. You know that you need those numbers to be able to make the decisions that you need to make on your budget, knowing what revenue you have coming in and what expenditures are going out, and to be able to drive that, you need the reports that you need. So we're actually going to be working, I'll be talking about it in a moment, on ways that we can actually step outside the current fiscal system and obtain those reports through another avenue. Also want to look at the time it takes to perform investigations. I know this is a little bit different for your board, but when you do use the department, we want to make sure that the Division of Investigation is performing their roles and what they need to do in a timely manner, and so that's an area that I will be focusing on. We actually have a report that's going to be coming out within the next couple months on the Division of Investigation, and there are several improvements in those areas where we're going to be looking at, and we've actually already started to implement some of them, knowing that it's going to be coming out in the report. Also want to work on ADA compliance, and I think you're a little bit ahead of the curve on this part, so that's a great thing for this board, but there are others that are still struggling with that ADA compliance. And then last but definitely not least, I want to make sure that the boards and bureaus in the Department of Consumer Affairs are implementing the legislation that gets passed, and making sure that we're monitoring that as a department and assisting the boards and bureaus. If there's a law that passes amongst all of the boards and bureaus, we should be working together to make sure that gets implemented, just so we're not always recreating the wheel. And so those are some of the areas that I will really be focusing on. So kind of a kickoff of all of that, I actually held a first directors quarterly meeting with all of the boards and bureau leadership on December 16th. And we actually had a great turnout and a lot of robust discussions. Some of the things that we actually had was an overview over our current DCA initiatives. We also had information that was provided by Deputy Secretary Leila Mirashidi on board appointments. And then last, but we had a presentation on AB 2138 implementation provided by the Senior Assistant Attorneys General from the Department of Justice. So we actually heard from Mr. Sahni and Ms. Castro on this implementation. So that was really important. I also have the goal of holding one-on-one meetings with all of the DCA boards and bureaus to learn more about their goals and the issues that they're facing, and trying to find areas where we can improve our communication back and forth. But as some of you may be aware, the department actually has currently several vacant positions. I'm actually missing a chief deputy director and several deputy directors. So accordingly, I look forward to meeting and scheduling those meetings when I have a full staff, so we can all kind of be on the same page. So speaking of the DCA regulation process, the legal office actually has created a regulation unit to directly assist in processing the rulemaking packages. In November, that unit finally became fully staffed. It was just implemented in July, and so they were fully staffed in November. And all of the DCA programs have now been assigned a regulations attorney who will act as an assigned reviewer of your proposed rulemaking packages. And I believe you have already met with your individual and is on board, and they will work with your board attorney as well in that transition time. Obviously, processing those AB 2138s, those are the substantial relationship legislation that was passed. Processing those regulations are of high importance at the board. We actually have to get all of the boards and bureaus through with that by the time July 1st of 2020, meeting those deadlines. So that's something that we're focusing on. And then another step that we're taking to move in transparency and efficiency is actually we have developed a system. It's called Sharewell, and it's a system that's going to track legislation, and it will basically allow the boards and bureaus to be able to get in and see where their document is in the process. The other thing that is actually helping is it's going to be sharing back and forth, so all of the emails and the phone calls and everything will all be done electronically through this process. So a reviewer will be able to review it and move it on through the process. We're also looking in those fiscal reports that I talked about earlier. What we've decided to do is our Office of Information Services, they're actually in a testing phase of a project that's going to allow us to pull those budget expenditure reports, the CalSTARS reports that you used to be able to get. So we're actually pulling the data from the fiscal system, and we have a system called Qbert that's going to put the data together, and it's going to translate it basically from the fiscal report into those CalSTAR account codes. So we'll be able to do those reports. And we're hopeful really that those will be able to be released early this year for the 19-20 budget, so you can have an idea of where your spending is. And then revenue reporting efforts have also just commenced, and so we anticipate a release a month after those expenditure reports are released. And one thing that Ms. Bowers had actually asked me to talk about is really online renewals and security. And our business modernization efforts for the Board of Accountancy specifically are well underway. The business analysis phase of the project actually began in July of 2019 when our organizational improvement office actually sent over 2 staff to begin working with accountancy. The business activities are focused on business process and documentation, analysis, and improvement. And this is a key step in identifying all of the board's requirements for a new data system. The review of business activities is on schedule with 97 business processes analyzed and documented thus far, and I'm sure that there's probably more to come in that process. The business modernization strategy is also aware that though necessary for success, schedules may seem lengthy. And so for this reason, we've actually identified ways to accelerate the transitional functionality. So in December of 2018, the CBA was actually the first board to utilize this acceleration method to accept, facilitate payments, and process licensee renewals online. It's called the Internet Credit Card Acceptance Portal, and so you've been using it now for some time. It's really worked well, and I believe Ms. Bowers would agree with that. And I think right now your licensee population in the last quarter of 2019 actually had 37% of individuals who are renewing online. And just from our experience at the medical board, that will increase. I think when I left the medical board, it's between 85 and 90%. So it's a huge asset, and it's definitely needed. But as we move forward in those processes of using those online systems, we have to address and monitor the security of those processes and its data. The online renewal process has now been through 2 security audits in 2019, and both were performed by the California Department of Military. And I'm really actually happy to report that neither audit produced actionable remediation items for that platform, that ICAP platform. I actually have Mr. Piccioni, Jason Piccioni, the department's Chief Information Officer, here with me today if you have questions regarding that process, and feel free at the end. Just a couple reminders, want to remind members that we actually, and any new members that you are here or reappointments, you do have to do that board member orientation training within a year of your appointment or reappointment. And we do have new dates set up. We have March 25th, it's going to be here in Sacramento. And then we also have one that we're looking at in June. We're trying to find a facility. The last time we did it in Southern California was actually in Riverside, and it was a long ways for individuals from LA to drive that far. And so we're trying to move it into the LA area and have it there. So that's why we don't have a date certain in June. And then we also have one set in October back here in Sacramento. Also, 2019 was the sexual harassment prevention training year, so everybody had to have the sexual harassment prevention training. So if there are any members that have not completed that, please make sure you do so as soon as possible. It is something that actually is, as well as being required, it is something that actually comes up a lot of times when individuals are going through the reappointment process, asking us if individuals are caught up on their training. So please make sure that you visit our website and get that training completed if you haven't already. And then also, finally, I'd like to talk to you about the Form 700. Please remember that those are going to be due on April 1st, and there is a fine for not doing it. I don't know if a lot of individuals know that, but I want to make sure that you get those in on time and make sure that they're handed in. And now that it's electronic, they use the net file system, it's a lot easier. But if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to your executive officer or the department, and we'll walk you through that and assist in that area. And then lastly, I'd just like to share that the department's communications division has been working to find ways to improve the interaction between the public and the boards and bureaus, to help them understand how to bring their concerns, comments, accolades, and complaints as effectively as possible in front of the boards. So they've actually developed a simple visual how-to guide for Californians who want to approach a board and bureau. And it's called DCA We're Listening. It lays out everything the public needs to know about giving their feedback to the boards and bureaus. From public comment etiquette to meeting mechanics, this guide is the perfect primer for approaching the podium. The guide's available both in a brochure and poster form. You can post it at your meeting sites. This was actually something that came, the medical board, we have a lot of individuals from the public that come and speak, and sometimes it's just trying to help them develop and understand how that process works. So we actually reached out to DCA, and they've developed this. One other thing that they're working on is they're also going to be providing a video as well that the boards can post on their website that can be used for that purpose as well. With that, that concludes my report. I would like to take a moment, though, of a personal privilege just to thank Ms. Bowers. And Ms. Bowers and I have worked together for a long time, been through a lot of pains and aches and pains together, and a lot of commensurating, I think, from time to time. And just want to thank her. You have a great executive officer and a great staff. And so I just want to commend them and thank them for the work that they do to protect the consumers of California. And I entertain any questions you may have.
Members, any questions for Director Kirschmeyer? Yes.
I just have one comment. I was fortunate to be at the October of last year member orientation and had a chance to meet and listen to Ms. Kirschmeyer welcome, in particular, the new board members, and I know she made them feel very welcome and very well supported, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silverman. And I was at that same meeting, and I must respond in the same way. Thank you so much. Members, anything else you'd like to say or ask Director Kirschmeyer?
It's
Well,
your
you-
chance.
It's her chance. I think we can reach her, though, anyway.
Absolutely.
And, you know, your agenda has so many issues and so many projects that you're working on that are relevant to our board and relevant to other boards. We so appreciate it. Also, I'm a February baby, so I renewed online, and it was just so easy.
Oh, great, great.
I
So
just have to tell everybody, it's a very simple process, and it
kudos
was
to your
worked-
team and our
worked
team.
well. Yep, that's right. Thank you again for being
Thank you.
here. We appreciate it. Okay, moving on to agenda item 2, which is the report of the vice president. It seems that we don't have no items to report on our advisory committees, so we're going to sail right into agenda item 3, report of the secretary treasurer, Mr. Silverman.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. I just have brief comments today regarding the budget. The CBA's current fiscal year 2019-20 budget remains set at $16,532,000. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-21 is $17,081,000 as released in the governor's budget on January 10th of this year. More details will be provided at the July 2020 CBA meeting. The governor's proposed budget now must be approved by the legislature. In May, the governor will again review the proposed budget and make any changes via light item veto in order to arrive at a final figure. The legislature must then pass the budget bill by June 15th, giving the governor 12 days to either sign it or return it to the legislature. Once the budget is signed, it becomes effective on July 1st, 2020. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Silverman. Are there any questions from the members for Mr. Silverman? Seeing that there are none, I am moving on to agenda item 4, report of the executive officer, Ms. Bowers.
Thank you, Madam President. So the first item under my report is an update on staffing, which I am very excited to share. First of all, we have hired a new assistant, Bitney Nguyen. She will join us from public industry. She will fill the big shoes that Allegra Keith left behind when she promoted in the office, and she'll be joining us January 21st. Second, and equally exciting, is we have also hired a new licensing chief, Michelle Center. She comes to us from the Department of Education with 19 years of extremely valuable experience. Her bio was in my January monthly EO report, so if you'd like to read more about her qualifications, and she'll join us in on January 31st. So with that, that concludes my report on staffing, and I would turn it back over to the president and happy to answer any questions on that.
Any questions for Ms. Bowers at this point? Seeing that there are none, Agenda item 4B, review and approval of proposed changes to the California Board of Accountancy Member Guidelines and Procedures Manual. Ms. Pierce.
Thank you. The GMP manual is designed to serve as a reference guide regarding the functions of the CBA and its committees. The edits were made in track changes and are identified by underline and strike through. The edits made to the GMP manual were non-substantive, just to improve overall clarity. It was noted that staff inadvertently omitted the reference to the Qualifications Committee on page 6 of the manual, so staff will incorporate this back in. At this time, I'll turn it back over to President Corrigan and would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Are there any questions for Ms. Pierce, members? And if not, do I have a motion to adopt the guidelines and procedures with the revisions?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion from the members? Any discussion from the public? Seeing that there are none, Ms. Reed, please call for the vote.
Jose Campos. Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Sochi Leon.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Ariel Pay.
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
And Mark Silverman.
Motion carried. Thank you. Agenda item 4C is an update and discussion on communication and outreach activities regarding requirements taking effect January 1st, 2020, related to Assembly Bill 1521. Mr. Bone, our Information and Planning Officer.
Thank you, Madam President and members. That bill was the CBA Sunset Review legislation. It was signed into law last year, and the bill contained 3 key statutory provisions to support the CBA's consumer protection mandate and improve our operations. First, the CBA's license renewal and initial licensure fees were increased to $250. Second, it required all licensees and applicants to provide and maintain a valid email address to the CBA if they possess one. And third, it allows the CBA to publish and distribute the update newsletter electronically. Pages 2, 3, and 4 of the agenda item discuss the key actions completed and planned to inform licensees and applicants of the impacts of AB 1521. A significant element of this project, as you heard Ms. Pierce allude to earlier, is our online email collection system. Wayne Wilson on my team, along with the IT staff, which were honored just a few moments ago, were instrumental and deserve the credit for all the hard work necessary to develop and launch this system. Later this month, the CBA will be distributing a letter to our licensees that discusses these 3 key elements of AB 1521 and will direct them to the CBA's website where they can enter in or confirm their email address if we have one on file for them already. Attachment 1 to this item is a draft of the letter. I'd like to point out one change that will occur in the final version, which is that we will be requesting licensees provide their email address by February 28th rather than January 31st. There are other non-substantive changes to the letter, and this date change allows licensees just a bit more time to complete this process. That concludes my remarks, Madam Chair. Madam President, happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions, members, for Mr. Bone on this topic? Seeing that there are none, moving on to agenda item 4D, update on California Board of Accountancy's communications and outreach. Mr. Bone.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a few brief remarks. On November 22nd, Ms. Zhang spoke at an event on the campus of Golden Gate University on the importance of mentoring, communication, and networking. State Treasurer Fiona Ma was the featured speaker at that evening event. It was sponsored by Ascend, which is a Pan-Asian business and leadership organization. On December 6th, Ms. Salazar spoke at Cal CPA's From Community College to CPA event at American River College here in Sacramento. There were over 100 students in attendance. That event focused on the qualifications to sit for the CPA exam, and the college officials there quickly expressed their desire for us to return soon to a future event. Looking toward the future, towards the end of this month, on the 30th, Madam President, you'll be speaking at Cal CPA's Student Professional Issues Update on the campus of San Francisco State University. Topics there will include the requirements for licensure, continuing education, renewal requirements, and future regulatory trends for the accounting profession. This event is focused on recent graduates and those nearing graduation. In addition, we've been invited to another Cal CPA Community College event at Pasadena City College. That will be occurring on May 8th. We'll have more information on that in the future. That includes my remarks, Madam President. Happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions, members, for Mr. Bone? Thank you, Mr. Bone. I am moving on to agenda item 5. This is report on our advisory committees. First will be our Enforcement Advisory Committee. Mr. Aguilera.
Hi, I'm Doug Aguilera, and it's my pleasure to be here as the new chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Corrigan and Mr. Campos for coming and sharing feedback with our committee, giving us updates on the board meetings. It's very valuable. Personally, I find it very valuable, so thank you for taking that time and meeting with us. The Enforcement Advisory Committee held its meeting on December 5th, 2019 in Burbank. I would like to extend my thanks to President Corrigan for attending our meeting and providing an overview of recent CBA meeting activities. The EAC also held 4 investigative hearings. Our next meeting will be held on February 6th, 2020 in San Diego. While that concludes my report, I would like to offer President Corrigan an opportunity to offer any additional thoughts about our December meeting, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I always enjoy attending those meetings because I used to be one of you. I used to be a member for a number of years. I'm just impressed with the array of qualified individuals on that committee and on all of our committees. But just the varying backgrounds, how they work together on issues, whether it's, accounting, audit, taxation, whatever that might be. So the diligence, and it all has to do with enforcement, which is so important to the protection of our consumers. So congratulations to you on your appointment as chair. And speaking on behalf of the members here and the members in total, we do really appreciate your dedication and your service that you provide. It's a very, very important function that committee performs for us.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dominic's efforts. He supports us very well, and then all of the staff are very professional and make sure that we're ready and prepared to interact one-on-one with the CPAs as they come in. And for many of them, it's the first and maybe only interaction that they have with the Board of Accountancy. So,
Yeah, that's very
Thank
true.
you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aguilera. We appreciate it. Okay, agenda item 5B, there is no report on the Qualifications Committee. Agenda item 5C would be the Peer Review Oversight Committee. Mr. DeLizer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The PROC held its meeting on Friday the 13th of December here at the CBA offices. And I'd like to thank the CBA member, Ms. Jung, for attending and giving us a presentation on the activities of the CBA. To kind of echo what Mr. Aguilera said, I do think that CBA liaison is very important. Many members of the committee, the PROC committee, have never attended a CBA meeting, don't know any of the members of the CBA, and I think it's a really good connection to make. And so I thank Ms. Jung for being there. In our meeting, we discussed and provided feedback. We did some housekeeping, approval of the minutes and such, and then reviewed the activities and assignments for the upcoming 2020 year, and spent a good portion of our meeting discussing the recent administrative site visit that members of the committee conducted at the California Society of CPAs. And then lastly, we spent the last half of that meeting going over our upcoming PROC report, annual report, which we'll present in March at the CBA meeting. Our next PROC meeting will be held here at the CBA offices on February the 14th, because nothing says Happy Valentine's Day like a PROC meeting. Are there any questions, anything I can answer?
Any questions for Mr. DeLizer, members? And again, thank you so much, and thank you for all the service that you provided to our board and have in the past. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 6 is the report of the enforcement chief, Mr. Franzella.
All right, thank you. So the activity report before members today is for the first 5 months of data through November 30th, 2020. I'll just step through the various categories and provide some highlights. So beginning on page 1 and on pages 1 and 2 are the complaints received. The CBA has received just over 900 complaints, which is an 18% decrease compared to the same period of the prior fiscal year. I do know we received a significant volume, I want to say at the beginning of this month or end of last month, so I anticipate that number of the decrease will start to narrow a little bit more as we move through the year. Moving on to investigations and investigations pending on pages 3 through 5 of your report. The average days to close investigations closed at 85 days, which is a slight increase compared to the prior report, but a significant decrease when you compare it to the prior 2 fiscal years of 201 and 127 respectively. Staff have closed 948 cases over the first 5 months, with 87% being closed in the first 6 months and 98% closed within the first year. On page 4, members will see that enforcement presently has 500, or at that time, had 547 cases in its pending investigatory inventory. There are just 9 cases over 24 months and just 12 cases sitting. Moving on to discipline, which is on pages 6 through 9 of your report. First, the AG referrals. The CBA has referred 31 matters to the AG's office and had filed 29 pleadings, with the vast majority being accusations. On page 7, at that time, we had 79 matters pending at the AG's office, with 3 over 24 months. Members will finally see that the 1 case that had been on there forever is finally off, as it finally concluded in the courts, and members received an update on it at the last board meeting. Of the 3 matters on the report, 1 will have an accusation filed in January. I actually believe we are looking at it presently. Another will likely also have a pleading in January, and a 3rd item has a pending matter before the board later today. Lastly, in the disciplinary section, or the discipline information, the CBA has acted on 20 matters through the first 5 months, and I believe another 10 took effect yesterday. On citation and fine, which is on page 10 of your report, through the first 5 months, we issued 93 citations, and over 70% of the citations are for the 20 and 12 yearly CE requirement. As for unlicensed activity, on the next page, during the first 5 months, the CBA received 66 complaints of unlicensed activity. We have 63 investigations pending. We've issued 8 citations, closed 107 matters for compliance, and referred 1 matter to the DA or local law enforcement. And the final area I'll highlight is on pages 12 and 13, relate to probation monitoring. We presently have 151 individuals on probation. At the time of the report, we had 2 outstanding orientations, but we have since completed those. We have identified 42 probation violations, with the vast majority being cost reimbursement or submitting quarterly reports. That concludes my report, and I would like to turn discussion back over to President Corrigan, and I'll do my best to answer any questions members may have.
Any questions for Mr. Franzella from the members? Yes?
I had a question about the complaint types received on page 2. So there was an increase in the designation of complaints as other from fiscal year 2018 to 2019. There's like a upward trend. I know this is kind of putting you on the spot right now, but off the top of your head, can you identify what why that might be? They might be sort of more generally categorized as other, or is that something that you can get back to us about?
I will do the latter.
Okay.
And get back to you on it. I don't want to suppose and then have to correct myself. So we'll go back, we'll look at what kind of comprises other, and we'll compare it both from last year and this year and see if there's some trend that we're seeing.
That's
And I'll
great.
report
Thank-
back.
All right.
Good, thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Franzella, on page 12, the total number of probationers is 151, but the number of licensees since the last report is 156. What's the difference there with those numbers?
So people come on and off probation based on when the action was taken. So at the time of the last report, we had 156, and 5 people came off during that window of time, and it's down to 151.
Thank you.
Some of it's, they're either on probation, or the board may have done different types of settlement that may result in revocations, so we had less people on them as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So kind of tagging on to that question regarding probations, we're 151, we have 151 probationers, plus minus whatever. But then on page 13, we have the probation violations, and we say 42. That's not licensees, that is the count of the
Correct.
citations, right?
Correct. Oftentimes, we'll have one individual or have multiple violations, so we count the violations, not one person had 3 violations. We'll just count the number of violations they've had. And oftentimes, you'll see submitting quarterly reports and cost reimbursements are generally the highest, and a lot of them are tied together because people end up paying at the same time that they're submitting their quarterly reports.
Okay. Yes?
Ms. Corrigan, can I piggyback on that question? Would it be good information to know the number of probationers that have violated? Is that already on this page already?
If the board wants it, I'm happy to provide it. It's just how we track it now. It may take a little bit to kind of go back through and see how we can report that information. It's how we feed it to DCA. They want to know the number of violations. They're less concerned about the individual, but it's something we can track. So it might just take me a meeting or two to kind of implement it and get back that information to the board.
Is that something that generally the board would find useful, or are we asking too much of Mr. Franzella? Or, I mean, I'm not sure, I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, it may be 10 licensees, it may be 5 licensees with a whole bunch of citations. I mean, it's hard to know what that really is.
My own personal view is that I know this is a very manual focused roll-up of this information. I think I'm satisfied with the level of information we're getting, and I think the key part is those violations that could lead to then taking action on probationers to remove them off probation and just instill the original discipline. And
Correct.
that seems to be the more important activity out of that.
Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, and so then I had another question. So I don't know what the quote-unquote trigger point is. A licensee has a number of violations, whatever. They haven't been submitting their reports, they haven't been paying their, whatever their designated agreed upon amount is. At what point do you take action? Just generally tell us that, and what action might you take?
So as a general rule, we try to make this as a successful process for the individual as we can. As we noted earlier, we do the orientations, we sit down with them generally in person, but over the phone if necessary, to try to go over the probation terms to make sure that they understand and we can answer any questions, or they can ask any questions that they have, and we can get back the information. So we can document all that, and we can have clear lines of communication. The trigger points tend to be their ability, again, the severity of what the original nature of the discipline was, coupled with the type of violation that may have occurred. Some violations are probably more problematic for us than, say, maybe being late or miss one quarterly report. And we work to try to create, just like we do in license renewal or other areas, try to create a situation where we can get compliance. Our goal is not to have this person fail on probation. Our goal is to help them get through the process. But if we're not getting responses, if it's a constant battle with the individual, or if it's something, for example, restricted practice, and we find that they've continued to do work in a restricted practice, that'd probably be a one-off issue versus something like a quarterly report where it might happen on two separate occasions or concurrent occasions that may result in us moving forward to petition to revoke versus if they missed it or were late by a few days, we'll take those things into consideration, and aggravating and mitigating circumstances. So there's no one trigger point. It is really dependent on that individual and how we view that individual's ability to get through that process. If we think there's going to be a concern or if it's a significant issue, then we bring it back to the board. We'll file the petition to revoke and have the board evaluate whether or not this individual should continue on probation, have additional restrictions, or potentially revoke the license.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Franzella on that topic? Seeing that there are none, I'm moving on to agenda item 7, report of licensing chief. I know you're kind of standing in on that one, and we appreciate it, and you won't have to do that much longer, but one more time.
I'm really happy this is the last one, or at least
Thank you.
hopefully the last one. So I'll keep these ones incredibly brief. So the licensing activity report you have before you is, again, for the first 5 months of data ending November 30th of last year. I'll just highlight a few items. Again, the big one is the exam and licensing division. Our licensing unit is processing applications within the 30-day time period. The total number of applications received for exam has increased slightly, while the total number of applications received for CPA licensure have remained about the same over the same 5-month period. The renewal unit has processed over 26,000 license renewals. As was noted last time, we hadn't done the audit process yet. We're starting to catch back up, and we've sent out the audit letters for this first start of that period. And I think that was for 75 licensees, and we'll continue to stay on that process throughout the year. At this point, I'll turn it back over to President Corrigan, and I'll do my best to answer any questions members may have.
Okay, members, any questions? Yes. Ms. Leon, please.
Thank you. So just double clicking on the observation that first-time applications approved decreased by almost 20% relative to past years, or the past year. So this sounds to be more of an operational issue than an applicant or some other issue, is that right?
Are we talking, just so I'm on the same, are we
Yeah.
on page 4, that fourth bullet?
On page 2,
Page
where we talk about first-time applications approved, that they've decreased by 19%. And I'm just trying to get a sense, is the profile of first-time applicants changing, or why so? But based on the explanation, it sounds like it's more of an operational issue.
Yeah, so for both, I guess, page 2, and I was all the way on to page 4 with that same kind of issue on applications. Members may recall, I want to say, coming in and out of 17 or 18, we were behind on the 30-day processing time period. And so there was a big push to catch up on all that, on all those inventory and all those files. So there was a lot of people who ended up being approved in those windows of time. And now that we're back to being in that 30-day processing, it's not, we didn't have this backlog that we had to get processed through. So there was a lot more that were being issued license or being approved for the exam during that same window of time last year. So I think the number of applications received is a better reflection of the people in the pipeline, or the people who are trying to get either licensed or sit for the exam. The other ones were just, again, operational at the time, clearing a backlog, and so you had a high volume of people being approved.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Hines, did you have a question?
I actually had the same question and concern, and I just would suggest, I know you're filling in on it, but I would suggest maybe for the next board meeting, if this could be a follow-up item, just to, or maybe in a future board meeting, a follow-up item just to confirm for the board that this is just a function of the backlog having been cleared rather than it being an indication of some other issue that we might need to keep an eye on. You know, that would be helpful. It might not be the next board meeting. It may take us a couple of board meetings to clarify that, but just I think we should keep it as an asterisk, as something that we want to keep an eye on and follow up on at a later time.
Good, thank you. If we can make a note of that then, and make
Thank you.
sure of that. Anything else for Mr. Franzella on this topic?
Yeah, so initial licensing, and so if I recall the backlog, I recall just within my own practice, just hearing from people where this was taking a while. So I see the bullets. It sounds like we're generally within that 30-day. We're always going to have, I guess, incomplete applications or things that require follow-up that would go. Do we feel we're at a stable operational mode now, or are there still efforts or things we're trying to work through that are pressuring backlog?
I feel we're stable in the sense of, you know, we're keeping to the 30 days. I think operationally, there's things that we can do that will help make that easier. Some of it through this business modernization, one of the things we're working on is we mapped out all our plans for all the steps that go into certain functions for processing an application. That one of the next steps is, I think they're called could be type maps, where they're going to map out improvements, things that we can do that are short of having to launch prior to launching any automation that would help us continue to improve. I'm not seeing any significant issues on our end other than just getting the chief in and then having that person have a better pulse on it than I personally have at this point. My team does, but I have less of that.
Please. And if I can just add to that, one of the significant impacts that took place in the licensing division is that we had relied heavily over the years on temporary staff. And there was a move department-wide to eliminate most temporary staff. So we actually lost a total of 14, and the majority of those staff were assigned to our licensing division, assigned processing. The positive out of that is we were able to go through the budget process to obtain permanent staff to replace the temp staff that we lost. So we got 10 permanent staff, but it takes a while through the recruitment process to advertise, find the right people, fill the positions. We're making progress on that. We haven't filled them all. And in the interim, what we've done is, in addition to Mr. Franzella helping out with the oversight in the absence of a chief, we also have cross-trained resources throughout the board and are using resources to assist to stay under the 30-day processing time frame, as well as a significant amount of overtime that staff willingly came in and did to help catch us up. So I think once all of our vacancies are filled, in addition to the chief, then I think we'll be in a good place operationally.
Okay, no, that's helpful. One follow-up to whoever can address it, just to right set myself on the degree of automation that we have in place now, and maybe I'll just indicate what I think my understanding is. We certainly have the credit card payment processes that voice checks where people take that. I haven't been through it yet, but it sounds like our renewal process now has an online capability of just filling out your application, maybe your CE and other stuff in there. So that probably eliminates some key punching type of stuff that came out of the manual processes, maybe. But the initial licensing is still the old forms, and that process that's still being explored. Is that kind of a good summary, or?
So on the renewal side, we haven't got there. The automation is simply just the credit card. That is a huge portion of getting the role, because the payment of the fee is what initiates a license, and then we go back and review that information and correct any deficiencies after the fact. So there's not an impact on that individual's ability to continue to practice during that window of time. On the application side, there's a high degree of automation as it relates to submitting applications for exam, and they can but they're not tied to the credit card side, and that is a step that we're working on. But they can submit applications electronically, and we're looking, as Ms. Pierce had reported a bit earlier, on things called LAPS, so the Licensing Application Processing System, to develop a methodology to kind of take it from the exam for those people who've passed the exam in California, to have their information migrated over so it's easier for them to apply. And have an automated component of that end. So again, it still is a lot of manually driven processes internally that will continue for some time, but we're trying to find better methodologies for individuals to be able to get the information to us through electronic means, and then the next step being able to pay electronically as well. So to your, I guess maybe underlying it, there is a lot of manual processes that we continue to use.
So does it help to look at other states, or is it just something that we have on our list that we're going to be getting to? We have the capability, we just have to get there.
So there's two things. The LAP system is kind of an interim step to try to create elements of automation for the initial application, and then we have a credit card system. It's just trying to feed those other elements into it. But business modernization is the primary, I would say that from my perspective, the primary overhaul that's being undertaken right now to map out everything so that we can have a system or set of systems that integrate with one another to allow for us to have increased automation and automation on both sides, not just feeding in, but that we're processing in a more automated environment. And so that's the undertaking we're working on now. I can't speak to the heart of all the other things, but I know they probably do look at how other states and how other governmental agencies process certain things for when we start to kind of move down the actual development stage.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Frenzel or in connection with licensing? Not, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to now move on to agenda item 8A. That's the adoption of the minutes of the November 21st, 2019 meeting that we had. I'd like a motion to adopt, which would include some non-substantive edits that were made on page 20275, duplication of some wording. So if I can have a motion to adopt those minutes as edited?
So moved.
Thank you, and I have a second? Second, thank you. Any other discussion from the members? Any discussion from the public? Seeing that there is none, please call for the vote. Ms. Reed?
Mr. Silverman, Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Abstain.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Jose Campos.
Yes.
Thank you, and that motion carried. And next, agenda items 8, B, C, D, and E would be acceptance of the Committee on Professional Conduct, Legislative Committee meeting, Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting, and Peer Review Oversight meeting. Can I have a motion for acceptance of those 4 meeting minutes?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. Any discussion from the members?
I
Any-
assume that includes whatever edit was made during the legislative committee to one of these minutes, or maybe it was a future one?
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, so I have a first, a second, I had that discussion. Any comments from the public? Seeing that there are none, please call for the vote, Ms. Reed?
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Abstain.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Thank you, motion carried. And I will now move on to agenda item 9, that is other business. We have nothing to report on the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, that is A1. B1, nothing to report on the National Association of State Board of Accountancy, which is B1, yes. B2, NASBA Bylaws Committee, nothing to report there. So under B2, the Continuing Professional Education Committee, I do have a report. I was recently appointed to that committee. That's NASBA's Continuing Professional Education Committee. The workflow in connection with that, and that has to do with the statements on standards for continuing professional education. The NASBA and the AICPA are a joint committee, and they distribute the rules and regulations for continuing professional education. So there is a working group that makes recommendations as far as those standards for revisions, changes, whatever is needed. Those recommendations are reviewed by the committee that I am on, which is the CPE committee. We review those, we may bounce back and forth a number of times, and then finally, the ultimate outcome goes back to the joint committee of NASBA and AICPA, and the decision is published. So the last time the standards were reviewed was 2016, and then they were more recently reviewed in 2019, and adopted by year end. So on December 16th, I attended my first meeting by teleconference. The framework for the Joint Committee of NASBA and AICP is to develop, present, measurement and reporting of CPE programs with the goal of developing and providing uniform rules and requirements and overseeing CPE programs provided by CPE providers. So just to give you a little information that I won't have to tell you down the line, but you'll understand how the committee works and how the whole process works. So there is a national registry of CPE providers, and currently there are approximately 2,200 members, and that could be organizations, it could be subject matter experts, etc. 20 to 25 only are offering nano learning at this time, which we've been recently dealing with as a board. And so the meeting on December 16th was to shore up terminology, clarifications, etc., relating to nano and blended learning, and so that the AICP and NASBA could finalize the standards with that terminology included. It had to do with defining course content, defining wording related to adaptive self-study, blended learning, and nano learning, completion of the CPE documentation that is required, very important there, and review questions were also added to nano learning. So based on that, we scheduled another conference call, which was this last Tuesday, the 14th. And the focus of this NASBA committee is to determine why so many states are opposed to nano learning. What's the reason? What's the concern? And NASBA wanting to reach out, maybe it's an educational process, whatever it is, finding out why they are opposed to it and seeing what NASBA can do to educate, to answer their questions, whatever. So that's what we're working on right now, and as more develops and as I meet, I will be reporting back to you in that regard and trying to find out what it is or how we can soothe whatever the issues are with those. And there are 14 states plus or minus, because it's tough even to get the population, get the reasons why. Many states are pending adoption, so it's we have an interesting matrix for all of that. Yes?
Thank you, Ms. President Corrigan. Is California one of those 14 states?
No. We are pending adoption. It's just we have to get through the legislative process. But there are states that have just outright said, no, we won't entertain it. Some are saying the documentation would be too extensive for CPE audits. Of course, audits are done on a percentage basis, verification of that the learning. And for example, I just renewed in Arizona, and they limit it to 4 hours of nano learning. It is true if I did all of my hours in 0.2 increments, that would be a lot of documentation, but they're not going to audit everybody all the time. And so there are just things like that that we need to maybe just bring to the forefront, find out what's bothering them, why are they opposed to it. Nano learning is supposed to be like just in time. I took a 3-day course 6 months ago. I kind of know the topic, but I have an important meeting with a client. I need to go brush up on this topic. And so I'm gaining from it. Anyway, our board determined there is a benefit to it. So that committee will be working to determine. So that's one of the key things right now, but you hopefully get the gist of what the committee does. But I am happy to answer any other questions you might have. Okay. And seeing that there are none, I am going to move on to agenda item 9.3, which is discussion and possible ratification of staff responses to the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy's focus questions. Ms. Reed?
Okay, the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA with staff responses to the NASBA focus questions, which were submitted to NASBA on January 6, 2020. The responses assist the NASBA regional directors with staying apprised of each state's policies and procedures and to see where improvements or adjustments might be made. No action is required on this agenda item unless the CBA would like additional information provided to NASBA on the questions. And at this time, I would like to turn it back over to President Corrigan and would be happy to answer any questions.
Members, do we have any questions for Ms. Reed? or anything further that we would like to have done in connection with this topic? Okay, thank you.
Ms.
Okay,
Corrigan,
why-
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, yes.
May I have may I ask a question about these focus questions to Ms. Pierce?
Of course.
I did find on page 3, question number 5 interesting. Why would they want to focus on who provided an answer? Do you have any insight into that? Could you repeat the question? Yeah, sorry. So going back to agenda item 9B3, the focus questions on the attachment, page 3, the last question, number 5, asks, NASBA is interested in knowing who provided responses to, or who compiled the information. And I'm just curious, why would they want to know this information? Why would it matter?
Probably just for their background purposes. That's a standard question that they've always had on the focus question, so I assume it's just for their own information to understand whether the information provided is just at a ED, staff, or a board level.
Thank you.
Any further questions in that regard? Hearing none, why don't we take a 15-minute break, then we'll go into closed session. So if you could all be back here at 11:25. Thank you. I want to call the meeting back to order, and I want to start with the roll call so we can establish a quorum with you, beginning with you, Mr. Pei, please.
Ariel Pay.
Jose Campos?
Deirdre Robinson.
Nancy Corrigan.
Michael Savoy.
Mark Silverman.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Xochitl Leon.
Thank you, and with that, we have a quorum, and I will now turn this over to Administrative Law Judge Sean Gavin. Mr. Gavin?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We have 2 hearings on for the calendar today. We're not on the record yet. I just want to briefly explain the process. Is Ms. Choi here? You can come take a seat at the council table next to Mr. Drakar. As I said, we have 2 matters on the calendar. Once we go on the record, I'll call the case. That will consist of me just identifying the case number. And I will need to, at some point, ask the board members on the record to identify themselves and establish a quorum for the case on the record. Once I identify the case and have the board members identify themselves, I'll invite the parties to identify themselves. Once we're done with that, then I'll have Mr. Drakar present the packet, the petition packet. That's just to orient the board and let them know kind of what the case is about. He'll introduce the exhibits. You'll have the right to inspect and object to any of those documents. And then we will turn it over to you. You'll have an opportunity to present any documents or call witnesses that you'd like to call or present. Keep in mind that the board has already had the opportunity to review the petition packet, so you don't need to walk us through every single detail that's in it. But if there's anything you want to highlight, please feel free to do so. Also, keep in mind that in a petition like this, the board is most interested in any rehabilitation that may have taken place as opposed to relitigating the underlying case. Once you've had the opportunity to present your evidence, then I'll turn it over to Mr. Drakar, who can then ask questions as he sees fit. Then we'll give the board members the opportunity to question you, at which time then the case will conclude, and we'll go off the record briefly while we call the next case. The board will, at the conclusion of both cases, go into a closed session, so there won't be the issuance of a decision today. And once your case is over, you're free to stay or go. It's up to you. Any questions about any of the procedure? All right, any questions from any of the board members about any of the procedure? All right, well, if that's the case, then, are you ready, Madam Clerk? Okay, all right, we are on the record in the petition for reinstatement of revoked certificate of Hae Jung Choi. It's case number SI 2020-19 and OAH case number 2019-101191. The matters being heard before the California Board of Accountancy. My name is Sean Gavin. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to hear this case. Can I have the board members identify themselves, starting with the farthest to my right?
Ariel Pay.
Jose Campos.
Deirdre Robinson.
Nancy Corrigan.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Xochitl Leon.
All right, thank you. It's been previously established that these members constitute a quorum of the board, and I would like the parties to identify themselves, starting with counsel.
Yes, good afternoon. Ted Durkar, D-R-C-A-R, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Business and Professions Code, Section 5115, and Government Code Section 11522.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Choi, you are here proceeding today without the assistance of counsel, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. I briefly explained some of the procedures while we were off the record. Let me just now, so the record is clear, repeat some of them in summary. We will proceed as follows. Mr. Durkar will present the petition packet, introduce any documentary exhibits into evidence. You'll have the right to inspect and object to any of those. He'll use that to orient the board about the case. Then we'll turn to you. You may call witnesses. You may introduce documents. And you can tell the board why you think the board should grant your petition, keeping in mind that it's not necessary to go through every detail of the petition, as the board has had the opportunity to read it, and keeping in mind that the board is particularly interested in any rehabilitation. Once you've had the opportunity to testify and present evidence, Mr. Durkar will then question you, followed by the board will have the opportunity to question you. Any questions about any of that?
No.
All right, Mr. Durkar?
Yes, I would.
Would you like to make an opening statement, or would you like to dive right into evidence?
I'll dive right into
All right.
the evidence.
Okay, you may.
All right. The first thing I'll do is mark for identification and offer into evidence as exhibit number 1, the original petition packet with accompanying documents. In this case, there are quite a few pages, and they're sequentially numbered HJC-PET 001 through 184.
Ms. Choi, have you had the opportunity to review those documents that Mr. Durkar has identified?
Yes, yes, sir.
All right. Do you have any objection to those documents being considered as evidence in this case?
No, sir.
All right. Exhibit 1 will be admitted without objection.
All right, and I'll now provide an overview of the evidence in the packet and how it's organized. We have the petition for reinstatement of the revoked certificate and other documents submitted by Ms. Choi. Those are going to be pages 6 through 27, and then also 180 through 184, some recently received documents establishing that she's taken some continuing education courses in November and December of 2019. And then there are documents establishing prior disciplinary activity by the board, and those are at pages 28 to 43. In short, there was a default decision and order ordered November 28, 2018, and effective December 28, 2018. And that followed the accusation, which had been filed on September 14, 2018. Then there are a number of documents here, I believe running from pages 44 up to 109, materials that I believe were obtained by board staff as a result of a fingerprint background check. And these matters concern some violations of post-release community supervision, which is like a form of probation. There were a number of judicial findings made regarding Ms. Choi. And then we have at pages 112 to 115, the original and amended hearing notices. And then there is, a letter from the board staff to Ms. Choi, attaching and enclosing all of those documents, which were 44 to 111, I believe. And that's pages 116 through 177. So in other words, board staff provided all of that evidence to her that they had obtained from the fingerprint background check so that she had an opportunity to review it and respond to it. And her response letter is included in her materials, and I believe that is pages 22 to 27 in your packet. Sorry for the length of this explanation, but there's quite a bit of material there. In summary, her petition explains that she believes she should be reinstated, acknowledging that she made a bad decision about driving under the influence of alcohol, stating that she regrets her misconduct, but that she is in compliance with all conditions ordered by the courts, and she has completed a 90-day rehabilitation program and is participating in AA. She reports doing well in her current position as a tax manager at a firm in Burbank. The accusation which I referenced earlier, which led to a default decision, it was based upon 2 criminal convictions. First, a felony conviction on May 16, 2017 for driving under the influence of alcohol within 10 years of another felony DUI or vehicular manslaughter. She was sentenced to 2 years of prison with pre-custody credit of 200 days. And she was released then on December 22nd, 2017 on post-release community supervision, which I'm going to be referring to as PRCS. It's a new category of supervised release following recent criminal justice reform in this state. The second conviction that was the subject matter of the accusation was a separate DUI conviction on September 1st, 2016, for which Ms. Choi received 3 years of summary probation and 96 hours in jail. And the accusation noted that she failed to report these 2016 and 2017 convictions to the board as required. That's at page 32 in your materials in the accusation. Ms. Choi's prior felony DUI conviction, that was the basis for her 2017 conviction being a felony, that was in 2007. And it followed 3 other DUI convictions that were in 2001, 2002, and 2003. The accusation also alleged that on January 12th, 2018, this is following her release in December 2017, the court found that she violated PRCS release conditions and she was committed to jail for 90 days with 22 days credit for time already served. And then after receiving Ms. Choi's petition, staff learned that Ms. Choi had been found to have violated PRCS 3 other times since January 2018, making for a total of 4 PRCS violations since she was released from prison in 2017. One of those court findings was on October 12th, 2018, when Ms. Choi pled no contest to a count of violating Health and Safety Code Section 11350, possession of a controlled substance. She was sentenced to 180 days in custody, which was reduced to 75 days plus 34 days for time served. Documentation of her arrest at PET 95 indicates that the violation occurred as a result of law enforcement inspection of her residence when they found 5 crack pipes and a bag with a white rock resembling cocaine at her residence. That was discovered on August 9th, 2018. Then on January 10th, 2019, in another finding of violating PRCS, she was sentenced to 120 days in custody. And again, on August 16th, 2019, she was sentenced to 150 days in custody, less 32 days credit for time served. That appears to have been for her failure to call in as required by her PRCS conditions. Ms. Choi's letter that she sent in response to notification and receiving the documentation of these matters, she sent back a letter to board staff on December 28th that is in your packet at pages 22 and 23. She explained that leading up to her 2016 DUI conviction, she suffered from a severe health problem and depression. She had stopped working as a tax manager. This was difficult for her, and she made a bad decision to drive under the influence. She noted her completion of the 90-day rehabilitation program, which I believe is in reference to pages PET 15 and 16 in your materials, showing that she had completed a recovery program in May 2018. With all of that having been covered, I'm now ready to proceed with some questions unless Ms. Choi wishes to make an opening statement about her petition.
Ms. Choi, do you wish to make any opening statement?
Yes.
Okay, you may.
Yeah, first of all, thank
Can
you.
Can you lean a little bit closer to the mic?
Does it sound better?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity to stand here again. And as I was told, I'm not gonna go all the detail, but I admit everything that I made the really bad choices, and I admit I have no objection to the fact, but as the deputy briefly explained, I had a severe health problem in 2015 and 16, and when I was working really good, and then I thought that was my dream come true, and then I was so happy, but because of my health problem, it affected my job, and I wasn't able to continue.
Ms. Choi, let me just interrupt for a moment. It seems, and this is okay, but it seems like you may be drifting into testimony as opposed to an opening statement.
All right.
And so I don't have any objection to that, but I do need to swear you in if you're going to be testifying. So can I have you raise your right hand?
Sure.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Go ahead with what you were saying.
Okay. So, yeah, it was difficult time, and I had this the addiction problem before in the drinking, and I was really working on it, but I relapsed, and it caused a lot of things, and briefly say I was experiencing something else too, but there was I completed the 90-day program in 2018, and I learned a lot and got a lot of help, but still there was some adjusting period. So it was kind of really hard for past 3 years, but I was, most of the violations were for the failed report, and it was very irresponsible. But as of right now, and I am in a good full compliance of the supervision. I'm still in the probation, but I've been doing everything, and then I continue receiving counseling from the program that I completed, and now I'm staying in the sober living, and it has been progressed, but now I believe I'm really confident that I learned a big lesson from the past difficult time, and then ready to move forward. So I have been back to the profession since October of 2019. So it has been about a little over 3 months, and I started resuming the MBT program at the Golden Gate, and I got readmission, but because of I wanted to focus on the work, I am planning to resume my MBT program in May, the summer 2020 class. And since I have been coming, but I have been continuing attending the AA meeting and then also receiving the counseling program and then SB30A program, and then which helps a lot for me to prevent any future same mistakes. So I am really working hard and I'm so nervous, so I cannot really fully represent how I am, but I love my profession and then that is so important. And then I'm so happy working right now. So I really want to continue, but I am never going to forget what I have done through like the past 3-4 years, and then really continue work on it. So please give me one more chance to work as this profession.
All right, thank you for that. Is there anything else you'd like to add at this time before I invite Mr. Durkar to ask any questions of you?
Other than just I'm always watching my health too. My health problem is recovered now. So I've been checked with my primary physician. So my health problem is good. And then for my like emotional and then for my kind of addiction preventing process, I have several counselor I'm meeting regularly. So and then also I have a support group, and then I'm doing the 12 step and meeting. So I am trying. My primary focus is my stability and then my health, so that I can be fully focused on my work. So yeah, so that is all I can say right now, and I'm really trying my best.
All right, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Durkar to ask questions. Before I do that, keep in mind that there's a woman seated to your left with a laptop in front of her. She's typing everything that anyone says. That's our court reporter.
Yes.
When you are questioned by Mr. Durkar, if you're looking at him, your back will be to her, which will make it even harder for her to hear you.
Okay.
So please ensure that you keep the volume up and,
All right.
and the pace down.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Durkar.
Ms. Choi,
Yes.
do you know when your PRCS is due to end?
You mean my probation?
Yes.
My probation, I believe that it is gonna be end in 1 year, which I believe is gonna be October. However, per discussion with the officer, since I am in a good stage right now and I'm working, and then I am about to start the MBT program, he is considering terminating sooner.
Ms. Choi, can I just really get right into the microphone?
Okay.
There's no reason to be shy of it.
Yeah.
I'd rather have you be too loud than too soft, because the court reporter needs to hear what you're saying.
It was originally be end in October 2020. However, per discussion with the officer, he is considering terminating the probation early. I'm not sure when, but his condition was since I am working and I am going to start a school, the MBT program, that is going to, he is considering terminating early. So maybe around, like, I think 3-4 months, he's gonna terminating sooner, which would be June to July, I assume.
Licenses are sometimes reinstated subject to a lengthy probation period with numerous conditions. Do you feel that you're prepared to comply with any conditions of probation that might be imposed by this board?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And can you tell us your sobriety date?
Sobriety date is I think it was June. It has been for a while. I think I started so it's approaching 6 months right now.
Your letters mentioned driving under the influence, but it appears from some of the documentation that in August 2018, law enforcement discovered what they called crack pipes at your residence and a white rock drug in a bag. Were you using another drug at that time?
Actually, I tried out. I don't really use habitually. I tried out, and yeah, I didn't use it since then. So I haven't. Under my probation, I haven't been tested with the drug test, and I think it was in sometime. Yeah, I was using for a while in 2018 for several months because it was the more really still recovering and very depressed by not getting the job or cannot come back to my profession. So it was more like it was even more choice. However, I haven't used it since I was arrested at that time for that. So it was, I think it's been over a year.
What was that drug?
The drug was the cocaine. It was kind of hard. I don't know how they make it, but I wasn't sure. It was part of the cocaine.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
All right, do the board members have any questions? I'll start again with the farthest on my right.
No questions.
Yes, a couple questions. What is your intent with getting your license back?
My since I chose my major when I was in high school, I always wanted to be working as accountant, and I was really enjoying working. And some of this problem was due caused to, I cannot really excuse, but it was caused by fear and some of the really disappointment about me couldn't really work efficiently in like 2005 and 6. So I was really disappointed and devastated, but my dream always, I never been thinking any other career than accountant. And I enjoy doing it, and then I love, and then I believe that I was good at it, and I love learning, and I'm doing taxes, and I love doing tax. So that is, yeah, I really wanted to continue my career.
Okay, you mentioned that you are currently employed at a firm. Is your employment contingent on you having a CPA license?
Yes. We didn't really discuss about that, but I didn't really, I gave my CPA license, but I didn't, honestly, I didn't really disclose that my license is revoked. So I am going to disclose that, but I really wish, and then it is going to be, I am not sure, but I think it's gonna be some problem. So I really hope, yeah.
You struggled with answering the question of how long you've been sober. When is the last time you did drugs or drank alcohol?
When I did the job was I think it's been a while since why I was explaining. Drug was I last time was maybe in like June 2018, and drinking. Since I've been going to meeting, I can't really say if I relapse, I start over. So last time I drank was I think 7 months ago. So like no, it was about 5 months ago. So about July, yeah.
Okay, no further questions.
Ms. Choi,
Yes.
you understand that our role is to make sure that we protect the consumers of the state of California. So I asked my question with that in mind. What measures have you taken or do you believe are in place that will allow us to be able to monitor you should you be granted the ability to return with a CPA license? What measures are you taking to allow us to be able to monitor you? And I direct this question to you because several times in your confidential document here, it talks about the fact that you didn't report in or didn't call in or didn't make a submission. And without that, we can't monitor you to see if you're progressing and how successful you are.
Right.
So I want to hear in your words and not pay attention to this, what you have planned for us to be able to monitor you to ensure the safety of the citizens for the state of California.
Yeah, it was part of the reason was there was like a miscommunication, but also I was kind of recovering from my like personal issues. But right now I have no problem about being monitored, and then as of now I'm reachable to like anything. I do not let me lose any communication or kind of being disconnected from anybody. So I don't know if I answer to your question, but I don't know. I can be a monitor. I don't know if there is only my wish is I want it now. I believe that I'm still like I'm never going to stop working on my problem and then preventing any of the same mistake. However, yeah, but I'm so nervous. I'm sorry. That's
That's
why
okay.
yeah.
Take your time.
But just main thing is before the problem I had the DUI back in 2001. Yeah, but since from the 2001 through 2000 like 15, I had some other, but yeah, I say that I was really trying my best, and then I have been really good accountant. I believe I was really doing all the compliance and things, but I'm like that is my character. I am like there is some gap. Like past the 4 year was very. I never been expected that much. Yeah, I never think about that. I will be in this position, but it was really I was a really big choice, and then like I don't know. I can't really explain about the past, but I learned it from my experience, and then I really don't want to go back, and I don't want to be stuck in this stage. It is really hard, and then I understand it will be really unusual case in this profession. So I am so shame. Yeah, it was shame on me, and then I really regret. But there's nothing I can do further. But I am really working on my best, and then my life. It is some personal thing, and I'm not married, and my profession is the most important thing in my life. I really want to work, and I'm doing really good job, and then I really want it to be recovered from my bad parents. So I don't know, like if there's anything like, for the my legal matter. So I was ignorant. Maybe I didn't really, maybe focusing on my problem or my job more than my legal. So I thought everything is over. So I didn't really, there was miscommunication about reporting. So most of the violation, except for one, everything was not reporting. But I learned it from that experience. So I didn't really pay too much attention, but the consequence was so big. So right now I am really focusing on, I'm gonna handle this legal matter completely. So I am doing, full compliance with that probation, and which I think that, yeah, I was verbally informed that he's satisfactory about my kind of a situation right now. So he's
How do you,
yeah,
if I
and then
could,
yeah.
and I hear that you're answering the question, that you're really trying, but I know that if we were to, I think what you're saying to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that if you were given any guidelines with which to follow, if the board gave them to you, that you would fulfill them
Of course, yeah.
100%. The thing about sobriety is that, once an addict, you're always an addict, right? You recognize that?
Yeah.
So then I want to ask you another personal question. Do you live alone?
So that's why I think I've been in the recovering. That I've been already sober for a while, but I still wanted to be 100% sure. So I volunteered to check into the sober living. So right now I'm in the sober living.
Okay.
And I am not drinking because I feel confident, but I still wanted to have take some more time.
Gotcha.
And then get some discipline. So.
When did you go into sober living?
I started living at this place in October 2019.
2019.
So almost same time when I started.
Okay. And how long do you anticipate being in sober living?
I do not, I don't know. Maybe I was thinking about another 3 months.
Another 3 months?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you for answering the questions.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Choi?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is your position, your title with your current firm?
My title is tax manager.
Tax manager. And,
Yeah.
and just to confirm, your employer is unaware that your license is revoked. They believe that you have an active license?
Yes.
Okay. And the clients that you work with believe that you have an active license?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. No further questions.
Questions, Your Honor?
Thank you. Ms. Choi, thank you for being here. On the page 3 of the petition, there is a statement at the top that says that you completed 213 hours of community service. Can you describe what type of community service that was?
Which page?
Top of page 3.
Page number 3.
Mm-hmm. So it is in the.
No, she doesn't mean item number 3. Go back to page 3. Yeah. Look.
Oh, in 2007.
Just be sure to keep your voice up.
Oh, yeah.
And this goes for anyone, anything that's said in the room will be reported, so the reporter needs to hear it accurately.
I think it must be now for a while. I think I was working. I was told by the court to go work in one of the government office for some administrative work, and also I was working in some the like a transitional program, like an alcohol and drug use program. I was just doing some administrative work. Yeah.
And then I also wanted a little bit of clarification
regarding your letter from December 28th. It's on page 22, PET
Yes.
22. In the middle, third paragraph from the bottom, you acknowledge that you rushed the recovery process and made some mistakes. What did you mean by you rushed through it?
Because of in the program, I was told since I admit my the problem in the addiction, they I believe that maybe I should take some more time just focusing on my health and then recovery as opposed to just going out and then just doing job searching and then too much burden on my kind of plate. But I, yeah, at the time, I felt that I need to get a job and that I need to make a living. So I was just really just going out and then me rushing back all this my kind of my life back together. And there was some like a trial, and then I had to. I was just excited, and then I got disappointed, and then it wasn't helping my process. It took a little kind of more time. So, yeah, everything, but I learned it, and then I became more stronger going through this trial, and then I pay for what I did. So.
And my last question, when you do complete the sober living program, where
Yes.
do you plan to live?
After at that time, after when I finished my program, it was my almost my first program that I completed in the recovery program, and then I felt I think I can just live by my own, so I lived by myself, and I think it was good. But after the recovery, everything I assumed that everything is gonna be just go easy and everything is gonna go well, but something didn't really expect it as I wished and as I planned, and I wasn't strong enough to handle that issue, and it happened that I relapsed a couple times. However, like as that going through right, right now. Yeah, I know that all this possibility and then risk or like what I should. So even though I don't really trust about my feeling or emotion, I'm trying to just go, and then I really trying to get more help from my support group. So I'm regularly attending meeting, and then right now discussing with my sponsor, and then other people who I met from the recovery. So try to watch and then try not to be too. I don't know. I just try to just to make it like one day at a time, and then yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming in, Ms. Choi. I just had a question about one of the things that we consider when, under these circumstances are letters of reference from professionals within your field. So you mentioned in your letter that your employers and clients are satisfied with your service and performance, but you didn't provide any letters of support, to attest to the work that you're doing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't yet, but yeah, I am able to. One thing I mentioned, this was really hard, and then I'm still really. It is really kind of I wasn't able to disclose about my license situation, and then it has been really really like I felt really guilty for that. Be honest, and then I really hope that but I was so scared that I will be given, and then right now, so I'm really working hard, and then I just without like doing they are like so I've been just doing a good job. So I don't know, but I didn't really get the letter yet. But if the board require, I will be able to.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you also didn't provide any letters from people who can, like personal, contacts who could
I see.
attest to your, like you
Mhm.
mentioned that you do have a support network
Yes,
now
I do.
that is
Right.
helping
Okay.
you, and you didn't provide any letters
Oh.
from anyone who can personally just attest to
Oh,
your
okay.
growth or your
I
strength
see. Mm-hmm.
or your recovery.
I see. Yes, I haven't, and then I don't know, it was kind of new, and then I wasn't thinking about it, but I am able to get the also letter from my personal people about that. I can maybe get some more recommendation letter from for my profession and then for my personal. So if the board allow me another chance, then I will obtain the letter and then submit to the board. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
I have no questions.
All right, Mr. Durkar, do you have any additional questions? Do any board members have any additional questions raised by any testimony previously given? Ms. Choi, do you have anything additional to add?
I do not have anything.
Do you have any documents that you intend to introduce as evidence here today?
No, I submitted all the documents,
Okay.
so I do not have any more.
All right. So that will then conclude the evidence portion of the case. We'll then move to a closing argument. And Mr. Durkar, would you like to make a closing on behalf of the people?
Very briefly, Your Honor, but
You may.
yes.
Go ahead.
Well, Ms. Choi is on a commendable path to recovery, and being sober right now is a good sign. However, the people do have concerns here because sobriety and recovery can be quite fragile for some people, and given Ms. Choi's history of a couple of decades of struggle with addiction, her petition would be much stronger if she had a longer period of sobriety, and if she had recommendations from an employer demonstrating that she is succeeding in the workplace. It's good that she has the job and the position doing tax work right now. But if there was some input here from an employer reflecting an understanding of the discipline that she's encountered and the problems that she has struggled with, but indicating that she is succeeding and that that person believes that she's eligible and should be reinstated, her petition would be quite a bit stronger if she had that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Choi, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Yes, I just to listen. So I will be working on it, and if also required, I am planning to discuss with my employer and then disclose this fact, and maybe get a recommendation letter from the employer as well. So.
Okay. In a moment, I'm going to ask whether the matter is submitted. And by that, I mean, are you satisfied that you've had a full opportunity to make all arguments and present all evidence you'd like to make or present? Mr. Durkar, is the matter submitted?
Yes.
Ms. Choi, is the matter submitted?
Yes.
Then the matter is submitted, the case is closed, and we are off the record.
Okay.
All right, we are on the record in the petition for termination of probation of Norman Lamont Meadows, being heard before the California Board of Accountancy. It's case number AC 2015-70 and OAH case number 2019-090325. My name is Sean Gavin. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to preside over this matter. Can I have the board members identify themselves, starting with the farthest on my right?
Daryl Pay.
Jose Campos.
Nancy Corrigan.
Michael Savoy.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Xochitl Leon.
All right, and it's been previously established that these members constitute a quorum of the board. Can I have the appearances of the parties who are present, starting with counsel?
Ted Durkar, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Business and Professions Code, Section 5115, and Government Code, Section 11522.
All right, thank you. The record should reflect that the petitioner, Mr. Meadows, is not present and has previously indicated that he does not intend to either appear or have a legal representative appear on his behalf. With that said, Mr. Durkar, would you like to present the petition packet for the board?
Yes, please. I would like to mark for identification and offer into evidence as Exhibit 1 the original petition packet with accompanying documents. The board members and the petitioner have been provided with a copy of this same documentation. The documents total 56 pages, including pages 53 through 56, which are the original and amended hearing notices. And these pages are sequentially numbered NLM-PET 001 through 056.
All right, there being no objection, Exhibit 1 will be admitted. And would you like to make any sort of presentation about the contents of the documents in Exhibit 1?
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
You may.
I will explain the contents of the packet. In his petition, Mr. Meadows explains that he is seeking to terminate probation because he wants to retire with his license in good standing. You'll find that at PET 7 in Section 7 of his petition form. However, his petition also states that he does plan to continue providing tax services. That's at page 8, PET 8, and Section 9 of the form. At PET page 27, you'll see the decision in order, which adopts a stipulated settlement effective April 24th, 2016. He was given discipline of revocation, stayed with 3 years of probation. And Mr. Meadows has lived in Washington the whole time that he's been on probation. So probation did not end in 2019 as it might have if he was in California, and he has been tolling. The probation continues. In his stipulated settlement, Mr. Meadows admitted to the allegations in his accusation. You'll see that at PET page 29, paragraph 9. And the accusation that was the basis for his discipline, that starts at PET 38. And the detail of his misconduct is at pages 43 to 44 if you wish to view that. In short, it states that in July 2012, Mr. Meadows issued an audit report for a 401k plan for calendar year 2011, but his certificate had expired already in August 2011. He was living in Washington at the time and did not hold an active CPA certificate in Washington when he did the audit. And the company for which he did the 401k review, it was based in Montana, and that state requires sole practitioners to obtain a permit in order to provide assurance services to a Montana-based client. And Mr. Meadows did not have that permit. Also, he failed to maintain a copy of the audit documentation for himself, which is another violation. Mr. Meadows reports that he has complied with all conditions of probation, but that does not appear to be quite correct. In the record, you'll see that he received a citation in 2018 for not complying with a continuing education requirement in 2017. That's at pages 46 to 48 of the package. He was in violation of Regulation 87. He failed to complete at least 20 hours in the first year of a 2-year renewal period, and he had been advised of this requirement in 2015. He was fined $150 for that. And so with that, I would turn the matter back over to you, Your Honor.
All right, considering that Mr. Meadows is not present, there is no reason to have you, Mr. Durkar, or any board members pose any questions. So with that, is the matter submitted?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the matter is submitted, the case is closed, and we are off the record.
Okay, we're back in open session, and we are on agenda item 12A, report Committee on Professional Conduct. Ms. Hines?
Thank you, President. During our committee meeting today, we discussed and took action regarding CPA firm mobility. This item provided the CPC the opportunity to discuss and potentially take action to direct staff to develop proposed legislation that would authorize full CPA firm mobility. The committee considered this item but did not take any action on this item. CBA agenda item number 12A3, discussion and possible action regarding accounting firms providing attest services with ownership comprised solely of certified public accountants who have not completed the attest experience requirement. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CPC the opportunity to consider possible enhancements to requirements for licensees who have not completed the attest experience requirement, who are sole owners of accounting firms that provide attest services. Staff provided an overview of 4 areas the CBA may wish to consider to enhance consumer protection related to this topic. 1, enhanced client notification. 2, peer review notification. 3, professional responsibilities for enforcement actions. And 4, work paper retention requirements. The CPC recommends the CBA direct staff to explore possible statutory changes, regulatory changes, or both associated with accounting firms comprised of owners not authorized to sign reports on attest engagements, but offer attest services as follows. Require that accounting firms include in their engagement letters for attest services a notification to the client of the name and license number of the CPA that the firm is authorized to sign the attest report on behalf of the accounting firm. Require accounting firms to disclose to their peer reviewers that no owner is authorized to sign reports on attest engagements. Next, amend or add the appropriate statutes, regulations, or both that require ownership to take the same responsibilities as accounting firms or as if they were the licensees who performed the engagement. Next, lastly, require accounting firms to make available the working papers to the licensee who signed the report on the attest engagement should the licensee no longer be employed with the accounting firm for purposes of any investigation conducted by the CPA. This is a fully formed motion and does not require a second. I will turn it back to the CBA president for discussion and action.
Okay. Do you have any questions, comments, discussion?
I'm opposed to this, and I showed that at the committee level. Why are we creating rules and regulations for something that we should just not allow? That would, as this case we heard before, it was quite an ordeal. They're not qualified, they had to get somebody. 3 different cases come before us. If you want to be, as one of my partners formerly of Anderson said, auditing is a serious business. If you really want to undertake it as a firm, bring on a partner that specializes in that arena, and you have a responsible party that we can always turn to. For this mishmash and trying to create rules and regulations to fit something that should just not be allowed, that is my objection to this.
Other discussion?
I'm curious to know how many firms
this would affect? I mean, I understood from the committee discussion earlier this morning that it's very few.
Well, I mean, only the ones we know about that come before us.
I hope there's more than the naughty ones.
Thank you. Our firm population information is pretty scant to begin with anyways, on this particular topic. I don't have any specific information to say it's X number of firms or percentage of firms. All I can say is that it started to come to our attention a little bit more, coupled with the fact that we just see the general shift in the population of the licensure group going mostly Gs, very few As, and so some of the idea behind the recommendations staff put forth are designed to be a little bit reactive to stuff we've seen, but also be proactive as this maybe becomes more of a larger population. To Mr. Savoy's point earlier, our paper doesn't contemplate any of the yes or no to whatever this, whether or not it's good policy to have the A or the G or any of that. It exists now, so the recommendations we are bringing are simply just to expand upon that. If the board has other discussions on that other area, staff's paper wasn't designed to touch on that particular issue.
And the discussion began with the enforcement committee, is that correct? And then it got kicked over to the CPC, and now it's before the board here. Can you remind us what the enforcement committee had to say about this?
So primarily the enforcement committee's original ask of staff was about G licensees, just G licensees doing a test level work and how we handle that and go through that practice. And that's really simple because those individuals are not authorized to do the attest level work. And we brought that matter to the EPOC, talked to them about how the examples we've had, what we do, how we treat it, and the resolutions that kind of occurred. But as part of that paper, we also just raised, this is very similar to what that ask was of staff to discuss about this issue. We've been seeing this issue come up. It was in our shop at the time, and so we raised it as a concern. And while it really wasn't an EPOC issue, because it dealt with more policy and those types of issues just in general, that's why EPOC kind of recommended the board to send it to the CPC. CPC did its discussions this morning, and now, as with all the committees, when there's a recommendation, it eventually comes to the board for final approval or not.
The only thing I wanted to I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, it was just something that Dominic already said. I thought the conversation was over. Was that it's currently allowed, so in order to decide to not do that anymore, would be to amend your regulation.
Decide not to allow.
Not to allow
people doing a test work?
Owning firms that do a test work through their employees.
Hey, they can own whatever they want, they just can't do their work, period.
Right, so but even if they hire someone who has an A license, that person working for them under the G licensee can't do it.
Correct.
Right, so, but the reg currently allows that, so I'm just saying that if that was something that you wanted to, look more closely at, then the regulation would need to be amended, because you can't have both.
So an amendment is the only way to go about making that type of change that he's recommending? Is that what you're saying?
Well, currently, the regulation says, basically, the regulation describes how a firm with a licensee that does not have an attest experience license, that regulation explains how that firm would go about having somebody in their firm who does have an A license to complete an attest service. So it's kind of, how do you have that regulation in place if you're not going to allow that to even occur? You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of contradict each other.
So your recommendation is that we would have to then go after the regulation, is what you're saying?
Well,
I'm just trying to understand
I'm not
the
recommending that you
transparency.
do it. I'm just saying that if that was something the board wanted to pursue, that would be the avenue. Or that would be step one in a line of potentially other steps if you wanted to do other things. But at least that would need to occur.
Well, some of the steps for the motion that's been approved by the CPC may involve regulatory changes. And so what Michael was just saying is he'd prefer to change the regulation and not allow a firm that only has G partners to sign a test reports, through a vehicle, that they might employ. Don't disagree with that. But what I would say is this is very narrow to CPA firms, to California CPA firms doing work for California headquartered companies. There are non-California CPA firms that might do work for a non-California headquartered company, but that have California subsidiaries that have standalone audit reports that get filed with the insurance department, with other agencies, and you don't know what that other state's requirements are. We're among the only ones with this A and G kind of stuff. They may have all G partners using our vernacular. We won't know that, right? I think this is helpful in terms of providing some safeguards for at least this narrow part of the population that we have some awareness of, and I'm supportive of.
One of the requirements, one of the benefits of this is that can come out of this is the requirement of disclosure. And, that there's an affirmative requirement of disclosure to clients so that the client knows what they're getting, what they're hiring, how they get the kind of report that they are, hiring these firms to provide. So it doesn't address necessarily the concern that, Mr. Savoy has, but it does get to another concern that we may have, which is that clients don't know, the consumers don't know what they're hiring these firms to do, and these regulations could potentially help them to, by requiring at least disclosure that provides them with some notice. But in the course of putting together these regulations, maybe it will come that this is something that we should look at further.
What's interesting in what you're saying is that if they now had to disclose it, it's possible that firm wouldn't get hired to do the job because a partner was not qualified to do it. So it's possible that it may work out doing this, where we may get what we want. And like you said, this is we're narrowing the box for those that do it. I just felt, you know what I felt.
But it's good to say it out loud sometimes.
Definitely.
Not to presume.
Any other discussion? So we're ready to take a vote? It's a fully formed motion.
Input from the public.
Anything from, good, thank you. You know the routine. Anything from the public? Thank you. Okay, let's call for the vote, please.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Deidre Robinson,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
No.
and Mark Silverman.
Does that conclude your report?
Yes, President Corrigan, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And moving on then to agenda item 12B, Legislative Committee, and Ms. Melina Lopez stepped up because our chair and vice chair of that committee could not be present today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this morning, the Legislative Committee met. We discussed an overview of the California legislative process, or we didn't discuss it. There was a written report about an overview of the California legislative process and the Legislative Committee's role. Next, we had an update, discussion, and possible action on legislation, which the CBA has taken a position on. Staff noted that AB 535, related to tax credits for certain professional license fees, was approved by the Assembly Revenue and Taxation Committee. Also, AB 1525, related to CPAs, accounting firms, and those who financial services to the licensed cannabis industry, was approved by the Assembly Business and Professions Committee and is expected to incorporate amendments requested by the CBA. Once those amendments are confirmed, the CBA will move to a support position. The LC took no action on this item, and that concludes my report.
Any questions for Ms. Lena Lopez? Thank you. Okay. And now we are at agenda item, I believe I'm in the right place, 13A. Any public comments? Seeing that there are no comments from the public, do we have agenda item 13B, any agenda items for future California Board of Accountancy meetings? Okay. There being nothing else, then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.